Okay, we're going to talk for a few moments about our soul issues. And we're going to start with the idea of your emotions or the kid inside of you, which is something we all have. It never completely goes away. We all still have very strong emotions that demand our attention at different times, depending on what's going on. It's actually our first form of communication. When you're born, you're actually expected to protest. In fact, if you don't cry, there's a sign that there's something extremely wrong with a child who is just born and doesn't immediately scream out in protest against the great change in environment. At one moment, you had everything you wanted and needed, and the next moment, everything has changed. So, our emotions continue throughout life to express our darkest fears and our deepest desires. We need to pay attention to those, but how we pay attention to them is different in adulthood. In adulthood, they're simply a form of communication, a source of communication. It tells us that there's something going on outside of us or inside of us, and it's our job to figure out what those emotions mean. What are they telling us? And then what should we do about it? Is there an action that we need to take? Most of the time, what we want to have happen is we just want the emotions to go away. We don't want to hurt anymore. We don't want to be hungry anymore. We don't want to desire something that seems out of reach anymore. So we tend to want to do whatever it takes to make the emotions go away. That's really not our best approach with emotions. So, a few years ago, I developed a 5-step process to help women figure out what to do with our emotions because we tend to filter everything through how we feel. In fact, most often what we do is we just find a good friend or a mom, a sister, someone that we feel safe with. We just let it all out, and the other person helps us to figure out what we were feeling, and we talk about it until the feeling subsides. You're going to find that, if you haven't already, that doesn't actually work very well with men. This process will actually help you figure out what to do with those feelings and how to not only express them in a relationship with a female friend, but also how to express them in the context of a male female relationship, in particular in a marriage. So, the first thing we have to do is just recognize that something's happening. We need to be consciously aware of those emotions beginning to rise up inside of us. Then we need to be able to identify what is the specific emotion that I'm feeling right now. The general categories are angry, sad, hurt, afraid, guilty, and ashamed. But there are lots of variations of that. Those are just the major categories of unpleasant emotions that you might be having. But you need to identify what is that particular emotion. Now, sometimes we can feel a whole bunch of different emotions at one time, and you need to figure out which one is the core one. For example, anger often is just a defense against some other more vulnerable emotion. And some people say anger is a vulnerable emotion. But look beneath the anger. What is it that you're feeling? Are you sad? Are you hurt? Are you afraid? Do you feel guilty? Do you feel ashamed? What is it that you're feeling at the moment? And then you need to think about what is that feeling actually telling me that I need? Or that I need to do? What kind of action is required? It's like a signal that's telling you something important. And so, what is that? And once you've identified what it is that you need, then you can actually ask for that need to be met. But once you do, you need to learn to accept the answer that you're given, not to hold on to it because the feeling is still there, because the feeling will not go away immediately. You need to absorb the answer, especially if the person, in particular your husband, has just given you what you ask for, whether it's a hug or some piece of advice or whatever it is that you've asked him for, then you need to actually let your system take time to absorb that. Mull it over a bit. Don't expect his words or his actions to be able to erase that emotion right away, because it won't happen. Emotions linger for a while, and we need to let them dissipate on their own instead of trying to force them in one direction or the other.